My name is Harley Reynolds. I was a staff sergeant with the machine gun section in Company B, 16th Infantry, 1st Infantry Division, on the invasion at Omaha Beach. My thoughts and greatest fears were that I would not live up to my job that I was assigned to do on this beach. And I've read since that that was the greatest fear of all the men, as to whether they would be able to do their job or not. Because failure is is a no-no. Failure means that if you, then a lot of your friends are dead. I was in the first wave with a special assignment on the invasion of North Africa, and I was in the first wave with special assignment on the invasion of Sicily. And that's a lot of experiences also. It felt that we were experienced enough that we'd make this one and it'd just be a cakewalk or a walk-on for us on Omaha Beach. But our intelligence was fooled on that beach. The Germans outdid us on that one. They slipped a whole division of German troops on that beach that we didn't know about, and then we had that to face on that beach. I think there were 32 men on my boat, and I was in charge of the boat, and it was called the headquarters boat because it had our company commander, Captain Marandino, on the boat, along with his runners, messengers, and so forth that we still had because radios fail now and then, and they failed on that beach. So the headquarters section was on my boat also, but they were the last ones off the boat. As boat commander, I was in front with my messenger. I had a messenger also to send back to company headquarters. And he and I were the first two scheduled to get off that boat. Of course, I made it, he didn't. I had 13 men and myself on that boat that came off first, and we were the machine gun section. Oh, the coxswain? Oh, the man gave me a lot of trust that everything was going to come out okay, because the man was cool. He knew his job and he did it exceptionally well. And he went on to put us into the beach. Among everything that's going on there, he put us on the beach to where when I came off, I didn't get my feet wet. Neither did my men, and they will tell you that. But shells were landing very, very close to us. And occasionally, we would hear a bullet hit the boat itself, a rifle or machine gun bullets. You could hear them zipping over your head all the time, from the time we got within range of that beach. They started. Our Navy guns were firing, and you could hear the shells from the big guns, the 12 and 14 and 16 inchers they were firing. And when those would pass over our head on the way inland to the beach, it sounded like buses or trucks or something being thrown from the noise, from the wind resistance, you know. And we could hear the machine guns on the beach, and I can remember saying to one of the men alongside of me that we're going to have a hot time on this one. Well, being in charge of the boat, the orders were that we were to keep our heads down below the gunwale of the boat. Everyone down, because bullets flying, you know. The boat did give you some protection, although they were flimsy. But I stood up many times and looked overboard and looked forward. I felt that I should know what was going on, if I'm going to direct the men where to go or whatever. And right at the very end, before I was standing up waiting for the ramp to go down, along with my runner, a radio man that was alongside on my left. And when that ramp went down, I was looking at the shoreline. And the shoreline to the left and to the right, and as far as you could see up to the bluff, which is some 100 yards away or 200 yards away in some instances because of the feature of the terrain. But I saw everything that was going on that beach. I saw the shells exploding. The ones that were among us, of course, were the enemy shells, but there were some along the bluff of the shoreline that were our own artillery from the warships. When we came off of that boat, I lost one man alongside of him. My radio man was hit, and I believe killed, because the radio itself, which was on his back, was hit, which means that the bullets would have had to come through him to get to the radio to destroy it. And then then a couple of the men coming off behind him, one of them, on his first foot to hit the ground, he was hit in the foot and went down there. And then that man went on to be wounded 6 times on that beach before he got off. But I hesitated, but only for a second, just to glance at that beach. Saw the smoke and the shells exploding. But then I took off. I had to run through that. And I didn't get but about 20 or 30 yards when the bullets were hitting around me on my feet, and there was an obstacle there that I made for, and I went down on one knee behind the obstacle for a short time, but just for seconds, because one bullet in one instance actually hit the steel. They called them hedgehogs, and that was very close to my ear. And when that one hit, I don't know, I suppose my feelings were that I'd been zeroed in, and I didn't want to stay there. So I was up and off and running, and I made it from, that first stop was 20 to 30 yards from coming off the boat. And then I ran from there all the way to what they called the shingle line that was on that beach. And I made the shingle embankment on the very first run with about 80 pounds of ammunition and equipment without stopping. And my men were right with me. We were in absolutely tip-top shape at that time. Well, we were below the ground. There's a line between the bluff and the water line, and here's the shingles. And the shingles are just a little bit higher than the water line, looking at it from the top of the bluff. So we were more or less below the rifle and machine gun fire. We couldn't move forward any further than that. We were stopped dead cold because of the barbed wire. There were many reasons for the barbed wire still being there. One of them was that they were supposed to have laid down a barrage of rocket fire. More than just rocket fire, but they were supposed to have had fire from the ships before this, because artillery shells and rocket shells do destroy barbed wire. They destroy a lot of obstacles on that beach. But it's a matter of record for one to read that the not one rocket shell fell among the dam or hit the beach line. They all dropped off into the water. And there was a joke about it that we had a lot of fish casualties, but you know, from the rocket. We'd been on the beach for, I don't know, 20 minutes or 30 minutes when one of my men stopped right alongside of me and went down and he says, Sergeant Reynolds, he says, how long do we have to pin up for this shit? He says, we're going to get killed here. So, well, I asked him, what was I going to do about it? While lying there, after some hour and 10 minutes is my guess as to the time that we were there while the Germans were taking the pot shots at us and so forth. Men were getting wounded. I saw many, many men killed and wounded on that beach while we're held up there. I saw who I believe was my assistant regimental commander and his assistant killed at that time. They were sort of pretty much immediately behind me, and they were hit immediately on coming out of the water. Many calls went out for Bangalore torpedo men who had been assigned this special duty. A Bangalore torpedo was a piece of pipe about 5 feet long that was filled with TNT, explosive. And they were made with a bayonet clip, as they called them, so they could tie a couple of them together, and that gave them a 10-foot long charge to shove under the barbed wire. But they had to be exploded by a detonator. And they stuck that in either end, and they pulled the cord on it, and it had a 5-second fuse on it, which gave the person 5 seconds to get back and away from that torpedo before it went off. After this lapse of time, a man crawls up alongside me, and he was small in stature, and I didn't know him, I didn't recognize him, and he was on my right. He is crawling alongside me, and he has a Bangalore in his hand, and he gets to the top of the shingle bank, and he slides it across the top of the shingle bank where the barbed wire was. It was on top of the shingle bank. And as soon as I saw him putting the Bangalore under, I knew what was happening. And I turned around and I yelled for Hoy and Rommel, and they answered. Believe it or not, they answered. I said, we're going through. I had to say no more because it worked. The man took the second section of the Bangalore, clipped the two of them together, stuck a fuse into the end of the Bangalore, pulled the cord, which was the igniter, and started and got back away from the torpedo. And after 5 seconds, it didn't go off. So anyway, he crawls right back up without any hesitation, takes the bad fuse ladder out, puts another one in, look back to see if he can back up, pulled the fuse ladder and started backward and only made just one little shove backwards. So I would guess that his face was only something like this far from that torpedo when it went off. But that man was killed. But he was killed by either machine gun or rifle fire before the Bangalore went off. Because when it looked like this, he turned around. My face is this close to his, and he's looking right into my eye when he died. And he died by just, he had a look in his face that to me at the time was pretty much like surprise. And then the Bangalore torpedo went off. And of course it blew a hole in the, I was up immediately and through that barbed wire. And in front of the barbed wire entanglements, the barricades. Once you got through them, then there were trip wires of barbed wire that you had to high step to get through. And then we had a pond to go across. And while we're crossing the pond, I make it all the way across the pond. I didn't stop for anything. The men are stepping on mines. Of course, that beach was loaded with mines. But I made it across the pond, and there's another barbed wire fence to go through, just 3 strands of barbed wire. I went through it, got to the other side of it, and I could see mines. The embankment, the bluff is sort of steep at that point. And I could see the mines that were planted, and they hadn't had any rain, so that the grass or whatever they covered them with was dead. So here was a yellow spot here, here's right there. So you were able to pick these mines out if you look for them. But many men weren't concerned with looking for them. They thought all they wanted to do was get the hell off of that beach. That's why many men stepped on mines. They weren't looking for them. One man who was a gunner on one of my guns, his name was Don Heap. And I heard my name being called, and I looked around, and there's this Don Heap. He was a platoon comedian. And he's holding his arm up in the air, and he's pointing he carried the tripod for mounting the machine gun that the machine gun was mounted on. And he's pointing the tripod at his arm, and honestly, the blood was spurting from his arm. You could see it spurting with every heartbeat. And he's pointing, and he's laughing, and he's pointing at it, and he's saying, "Stateside, stateside." He knew he'd got the good wound, but it didn't happen that way. He was wounded the second time before he did make it off that beach. After going through that second barbed wire fence, this is just a fence, and I turned left because I could see the mines that had been planted heading up toward the top of the bluff, and I was avoiding them at that time. And a man came by me. I don't know who he was, what outfit he was with. He could have been an engineer on that beach as far as I know, but he got from here to that wall, which I would guess at some 12 to 15 feet in front of me, when a mine that had been hung on a fence post went off just as he's alongside of it, and it blew the man in half, pretty much in half. He's still one piece, but half of him is missing. And of course, I'm held up for a couple of seconds when this happens, and then I start moving again. I move by him, and then I found a spot that looked like there were no mines, and I turned uphill or up toward the top of the bluff. And I'd only made a few steps up the bluff when here comes another man. He runs by me. I'm leading up to that point, and he goes by me, and then another 10 or 15 steps, and I catch up with him. He's sitting there with his heel blown off. I didn't see the mine that he actually stepped on, but he was that close to me when it happened. I said, "It's okay, buddy. The medics is right behind us. It doesn't look like it's that bad." But it was. It was blowing his heel off. Then that was the last man that I saw that I recognized of being wounded on that beach. Well, I didn't face that many, or didn't see those Germans until I got to the top of the bluff. The Germans that I saw in the trench to my right, or the men that I saw there, were Germans. And I had my glasses, binoculars on them, and I could identify them as Germans, and I had one of my machine guns set up to fire on them. And I mean, even though they were in front of someone else, when you saw Germans, you eliminated them if you had the chance, and while you had the chance. So, but he only fired one burst at them, and I believe it was because he didn't fire anymore, is because some men had stuck their head up over that they were coming up over the bluff, and a man raised up and threw a grenade at the entrenchments, the German entrenchments. And so we didn't fire in that direction. We knew they were within grenade range of the Germans at that point, and let them do their job, let's say. I have credit in the history books as being the first one to the top of that bluff in that sector. It was just circumstances that put me there to be the first man through that wire, not anything that I did. So I can't take a lot of credit for it other than just going through it. And my men were right behind me.